Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of EOS Rewired, where I have the opportunity to sit down with my friends Brendon and Torben Anderson from EOSphere Dev. Today, we have the opportunity to speak to Marcin from Tokenika. And Marcin, I've heard about the project quite a bit. It's been around for quite a bit, but I think there's some people who maybe don't have a full grasp of what you guys are doing. Is there any chance you can kind of introduce yourself, talk about where you came from, and then what the project is all about?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be able to partake in this. As to Tokenika and our projects, we've been involved in DPoS for a really long time. So basically, from around the days of early bit shares is where it all started for us. So we were kind of, we've been a witness of this whole thing maturing to the point um, which it is right now, and so it's quite a natural environment for us, and we were actually hoping for something like EOS to come about. So essentially, when we were toying with BitShares, it was simply missing the smart contract layer that was flexible enough to get the whole gig properly started, which is what happened on EOS. So right now we're heavily involved in the development side of it. So Tokenika is actually a quite technical block producers as block producers go from what I've witnessed. We develop low-level dev tools for smart contracts integration testing, which is quite, I would argue that it's a quite serious task at hand, because to get your smart contracts right and to be able to test them in an automated way, it can save you millions, as we've seen in the past when hiccups happened to smart contracts. They would just go awry and send funds into oblivion or lock them up indefinitely or whatever else would happen. So one of such products of ours is called EOSFactory, which we are intending to build into the equivalent of Ethereum's Truffle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ethereum, but Truffle is this massive sort of development framework that lets you set up smart contracts, test them, and basically work with code around that in a very easy and automated way. And EOSFactory is already doing quite a lot of that. So essentially, with a few clicks, you can set up test networks, you can automate the whole testing process, the account creation, the wallet creation, the resource allocation happens automatically, so the developers don't need to worry about that when interfacing with the blockchain. Like, things just happen in the background, and all of a sudden they have their sort of sandbox testing ground ready. It will work with all the test nets as well as with the main nets. Of course, then it needs real EOS to work properly. So probably testnet is a better idea to begin with. But it's quite neat. Also, it features human readable account names. So when you're developing code, for example, and you have several actors in your smart contracts, you don't need to sort of try to memorize, the 12 characters with all the garbage ABC, blah, 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 like the way it's coded on EOS naturally. You can assign real names to that, and they will be mapped automatically to account names that are actually on the network. And you can reference them as, Bob Alice or whatever else, and it'll just behave in a controlled manner. So this is kind of our main gig, you would say. We're also quite involved in the especially in the beginning. I was very involved in the governance threads in EOS, because we come from a quite, what I would say, libertarian standpoint on blockchains in general, that they run globally, and because of that, it's extremely difficult to regulate them in any way, especially by force or by the use of any third parties or anything like that. So I had this sort of a monumental beef with the concept of ECAF, that I thought was just basically a point of failure for the protocol. because this is how you enter the space and mess things up if you want to influence it through some third party that has a slightly ambiguous scope of operation. So that was a big battle that lasted on Telegram for many weeks and many nights, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And but now things seem to have settled down and are going actually in the right direction. So we also run a proxy that supports sort of development oriented block producers, with which we'll sort of run through whatever the people are doing and cast our votes to the crews that we think are building something. And this is the narrative around the proxy. And also recently we voted for several proposals on the referendums, including the New York user agreement proposal, which we think is quite sound. Yes, that was the drift from the governance topic and that I brought up. We're also working on something called a siloed arbitration contract, which technically what it does, it takes a portion of the space and seals it in a way where two parties can enter a contract and interact within it until all their claims are clear, and only after that the funds are released, which is a complicated way of talking about escrow. But there's additional functionalities there that we're trying to implement, so you can attach documents to individual steps of the escrow, so to make it in a sort of a structured way of going through the entire process, and to open source it and give it out to the community. This has been a little bit of an uphill battle lately, because with all the price fluctuations and the rankings that we occupy currently, our funding has dried up a little bit, so we had to be a little bit more careful with things, especially that EOSFactory is a big project and it requires constant efforts. I think we're into our 8th release right now of EOSFactory, and I think it's due out this week. We're about to push it out maybe today or tomorrow.
Yeah, like you mentioned, eight releases on that thing, because you released that in May, so nearly 12 months ago now that you released that token factory. We've actually seen quite a bit of that recently, where we had it on our show 2 episodes ago was Infinios. They're kind of building a similar sort of thing in JavaScript world, and we've seen EOS Studio. They're also trying to build a sort of drag and drop type or GUI to do these sort of things. And obviously you focused, or from the start, you focused more on the sort of Python niche group, and essentially providing the service for everyone, but that Python based, which I feel is quite important as well, because I mean, Python has got such a strong base community, and it's such a core learning language to bring new people into software development. So that's really good to see that you guys have done that, and just everything else tends to go on JavaScript and that sort of level. So yeah, great to see that project. Sorry, just on that arbitration stuff, just so you know, EOSphere Dev, we're actually working on the Telos arbitration contract front end at the moment. So that's actually being built right now on by one of our team.
Yeah, it's we feel, like, because I think it was easy to jump the gun here and sort of like start imagining things as to what exactly is needed and how are people going to interact on EOS, and what kind of arbitration is going to be needed and stuff like that. I think it's easy to sort of get engulfed in this little bubble, especially when you're in the heat of a discussion, or where is the blockchain supposed to go, how is it going to be governed and stuff. But now what I'm seeing is happening is actually we need to like take a close look at what do the users really need in this sort of interaction. Like, what is the probability of buying, say, a large amount of goods between two countries and paying them in EOS and having that arbitrated on the EOS blockchain. Like, I don't think that happens very often, and I wish it has, but I think there's a few more steps we need to take for this to even be a thing. And definitely one of these things that I see that should be coming, and I think Dan Larimer has mentioned this in several of his messages or appearances, that an EOS stablecoin would come very handy when it comes to real transacting on EOS, something that is tied to some sort of a basket of fiat currencies or the other, because you know, when it comes to paying people and all this business kind of arrangements, especially the more complicated ones that sometimes, for example, would take a lot of time to arbitrate if things went south. The price fluctuations in crypto are actually so risky to begin with that you can't imagine having like some substantial arbitration thing going between two large parties that, you know, shift millions of dollars of worth of goods and then have it. Yes,
that's a perfect example of that, where they pay out people for the value of what Bitcoin was then. It was something like $300 a coin or something. So yeah, that's a perfect example of what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that I think you know, in the amidst of all the excitement that we went through after the launch, and you know, everybody was trying to sort of find their place and make their presence felt. I think now is more the time to look into what is actually needed, and then build that, as opposed to sort of like take on this these you know, wannabe roles and try to build this or that, and maybe this will get you somewhere or this, because I think that the block producers have like naturally suffered from this disease, because in the new space it is hard to find like some kind of a pragmatic, you know, approach to things. But right now I think this is where things are going, and I'm really happy actually to see the referendum contract.
Yeah.
So even though we cannot hit the 15% threshold, it's a very good signaling device as to what the community thinks, because when you examine the proxies, and you know, the people who run them are usually quite in the know and understand quite a lot more than just some average token holder, with all due respect to EOS token holders. But when you start a proxy, you're probably like inclined to read up on stuff and just get involved with the community more. So it's a great experiment that we're taking part in. I really feel that you know, in history it's going to go down as something extremely important, like EOS in general. It's an attempt at liquid democracy, and about like establishing a true community that is decentralized, but also has to somehow come together in a way that is functional, because otherwise the token will just, you know, get destroyed if it doesn't get adopted. That will be its fate. And we're also you know, there's some buoyancy from the gambling side, which I really also welcome, because the adoption, usually the funny thing is the adoption of anything happens from all these weird industries, like internet. You know, it started with basically with porn and some other like pretty shady stuff, and only after that the protocol was smooth enough to actually do more serious stuff. I think similar things are going to happen to blockchains, and gambling on EOS is a good sign. You know, it's a great omen for the things to come in the future, that we're actually getting adopted and people are choosing this platform.
Yeah.
So
we're actually trying to build things in terms of, or we've been exposed to lots of things of based on that gambling adoption. People suddenly have a need to track their dividends and their payouts, and what dividend is a more high quality one than another one. So that we're starting to see people build these dividend tracking portfolios, and which actually have a lot of resemblance to financial portfolios, and they can probably be reused into other dividend paying protocols and services down the road. But right now they're being built for the gambling adoption. So yeah, it is really interesting. Any adoption is good, and it drives innovation. So good to see.
Yeah, there's also one really sort of interesting angle that I wanted to speak to you guys about, and also like pick your brains a little bit. We're quite heavily involved in something called self-sovereign identity as of late, which I believe is going to be probably the single most profound use case for blockchains in the next 10 years. And this is something that we sort of gotten used to the fact that the internet doesn't have an identity layer, because that's the way it originated, as a sort of a military grade network. The authentication layer in it was on the second layer, was not on the base layer. You didn't have to log into the internet. You could just go on the internet and then log into the apps. And so this is what we're living in to this day. Like to every app you have to log in. But the self-sovereign identity is actually something that you can own. This is something that you possess in your own name, and it actually holds all the credentials that you're ever going to need throughout your life. So it's all the the universities you finished, whatever, and these are actually signed by these third parties cryptographically, and it also happens in a decentralized manner. And it opens up a huge space of business use of all kinds of revolutions that could happen around it, and we see it maturing very quickly right now. We've recently became a part of such network, which is called Sovereign. So we became a sovereign steward, not as Tokenika, but as a mother company. I'm sorry, as a child company of Tokenika, and we are like currently investigating this space with big open eyes as to how powerful these things are going to get. And we're going to be porting this onto EOS also. So we're going to probably take the Sovereign API and open it up to EOS users so they can use the proper self-sovereign identity layer that the Sovereign Foundation is working on. Sovereign Foundation is actually this giant consortium of subjects that, along with Linux Foundation and the W3C organization, works with standardization of the web protocols, is working on the proper identity representation for people. So the work is quite profound. It's more philosophical than just like related to some single blockchain or whatever. It's all open source, so you can draw from it whatever you need, and the power of it is actually immense, because using this protocol I can sign with my unique cryptographic signature a credential for anyone else who is also in the network, and this is without a doubt me, of course, as it happens on blockchains. That's no big deal these days. But the thing is that you can actually invoke this kind of what they refer to as the web of trust. So I can be sort of testified by my university and also by you guys, for example. So your word is going to be worth as much as your word is worth, but my uni is my uni and whoever else. And when we take that and you add reputation to it, you can almost circumvent apps altogether, because you can sort of interface with the world in your own name. All you need is a bit of information and some intentions attached to it, and all of a sudden you have something that works outside of the paradigm of Google, of Facebook, of everything else. You're just your own sovereign citizen on the web. And I think we are quite we've overlooked the importance of the lack of identity on the internet in general. So blockchains do sort of shrub against this a little bit. Sometimes, there's things like Scatter that will let you log into multiple platforms for your blockchain credentials, which is sort of that. But the self-sovereign identity per se, like the big concept, it actually enables you to hold all your sensitive data in your own name that is unrevocable from you by anybody ever. And these keys are also distributed amongst your peers in a way that if you lose it, you can revoke it. So this could be your family, for example. So you never lose your digital identity, and this is for you, and this is for the time of your entire life, actually. So the concept is immense. I just wanted to share this with you guys because we're all nerds to some extent, obviously, and I'm just like so stoked about this that I just can't almost sleep, and we want to bring it to EOS too.
I think it's brilliant, but I also think that like I read, I watch, and I listen to a lot of things on AI, blockchain, automation, a lot of Elon's warnings and a lot of other warnings. I think that as we start to develop more cognizant and we get a little bit closer to a true artificial intelligence, I think that we need to protect a certain amount of our information from the chain itself, because if we manage to develop this sovereign thinking artificial intelligence, having every aspect of our life on the blockchain is also a really scary thing. But it's a double-edged sword because we already do that with centralized entities like Facebook and Google. All these companies are currently tracking all of our information on a daily basis. And if eventually some sort of system evolves, some sort of artificial intelligence system evolves and is allowed to kind of do what it wants, it really depends on its own will. But I think that if we can find ways to create that integration into blockchain that leaves a little bit more of the power inside of our own hands and is relatively unhackable, I think that it could be a really good thing. But I also think that we need to be really careful about this balance as artificial intelligence starts to develop and protecting a lot of our movements, because I really feel like the next step in blockchain is exactly what you're talking about, Marcin. I'm not speaking negatively about it, but I'm saying everything from your car's movements to your finances to absolutely everything being on the blockchain. And if we can create some sort of barrier to that is, I mean, it would almost have to be unhackable, really. Then I think that it's a thing. But I think that blockchain is going to take over every aspect of our life. I really do.
The cool thing was it's a very, very pertinent observation that you just made. The cool thing about actually the self-sovereign identity that is done by Sovereign Foundation is that no sensitive data is written to chain ever. Yeah. Which is a cool thing. It actually prevents the concern that you just brought up. So basically the blockchain there only works as a relay to tell you what data is to be found where and who signed it. And this is everything that lands on the chain. But the servers and the endpoints could be actually appointed by the users. And this is how it's done actually in Sovereign. So your edge device, in this case your phone, is your wallet, and it holds the whatever credentials. So things are not written on chain. It's a very good point you made. And they've been thinking about this for a good 10 years now. I think this is how old the project is. It's not a flashy one because there is no tokens, there's no speculation, there's none of the crypto hype that will keep things in the limelight. But there is a lot of deep philosophical thinking as to how to progress forward, and we're very stoked about that. We're actually building a business around this. It's called Signet, and it has to do with storing digital receipts using this methodology, using the SSI, which is self-sovereign identity. As digital receipts are pieces of very sensitive data that you wouldn't want third parties to process because, like for whatever reasons, you might have some sort of a disease. When you go to the pharmacy, you don't want the receipt to end up in the wrong hands, because then all of a sudden your insurance rates go up and things like it's happening anyway. But actually that is the fix to it, the communication between the merchant and the client happens directly. It's a peer-to-peer transmission of the receipt. So this is like one of those examples, but you can make as many businesses like this as you possibly would want, and every single one of them would be disruptive to the status quo. So this is what is cool about this technology, and we're really looking forward to introducing it to EOS as a sort of an API that you could use.
Yeah, Marcin, I think that's really great. I'm really excited to have someone inside the EOS network be able to bring this whole thing that's been building outside of the blockchain into our sort of environment. It's been clear to me that the internet was built, in terms of authentication, was built backwards. And I think Scatter definitely has given us a little bit of insight into what it can be and how it can be, where you just log in once and you go wherever you go. Things adapt to know what you are and who you are and what you have, obviously within whatever limited scope they have. And they are trying to do a lot of things with their Riddle token and to do to grow that space. But it is certainly exciting to see that there's something that's been building for 10 years, and by the foundations you mentioned, that shows a lot of promise. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that. So I hope you keep us updated, and we'll be happy.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have a word with Nathan James about this, because I think that integrating the sovereign SSI into Scatter would be like the sort of the proper double whammy here, you know, in a good way.
They're kind of the market. They've got, Scatter's got a bit of a network effect within EOS, so if you can leverage that and help them keep going in the right direction, that'll be fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely in the cards. So yeah, this is basically, you know, what we're into right now. Like, the last thing I probably forgot to mention is we have an index of EOS projects called EOS projects, quite originally named, that just lists everything that is going on EOS. We try to be quite diligent with it, so, you know, remove all the dead bodies, all the waste, and keep it updated. Also verify the GitHub repositories where the things are going there. So if anybody's looking for a comprehensive sort of list of things that are happening on EOS, go to eosprojects.org. And other than that, it's just, you know, it's hectic. You know, you guys, it's probably also for everyone in this space, right? You need to, it's every day. It's never a dull day here.
That it isn't.
Yeah.
So, Marcin, just coming up to the end of the show, we like to ask everyone what they think about their EOS price prediction for the end of the year. Just a bit of fun trivia, whether you have a prediction for the end of the year.
A price prediction for the end of the year. It's 2019. Okay, so we are now in March, just 9 months. I would probably place it somewhere around $5 to $6. That would be my prediction. Because my broader picture, I've actually been trading for a good 6 years in derivatives trading before crypto came about. So I do a lot of these sort of mood analysis and, you know, technical analysis also. And what I think awaits us is kind of like past the burst of the dot-com bubble. This is the stage that we're in right now. So most of the blockchain projects are going to have a relatively hard time, because they are pretty useless, to be blunt. You know, that if you take the active user base for any particular blockchain, the valuation is, you know, in hundreds of millions of dollars, and then there's like 2,000 active accounts, which shows the discrepancy of the value given by any given solution to the number of people that are actually in the need of it. So what I think might happen is there might be a sideways trend for a few more months, probably, like bumping up and down, and as we've seen lately. But I think it should start consolidating and slowly progressing up, kind of like we had in the middle of the Bitcoin 2016 and 15. There was this flattening of the curve, and then the things that actually made sense started picking up speed, and then the whole shebang happened, you know, the frenzy and the hysteria. I don't see that coming back again, to be honest, because a lot of people have heard about it. You know, there is little hype to be remade and repackaged, unless I'm downplaying the effect that new people enter the stage, like people that are younger, for example. They've not been exposed to the frenzy. So this could be, this could work in the favor. but I wouldn't expect any, $20, $30, $50 valuations at the end of this year. Probably later in 2020, maybe. If we really do a good job developing stuff, then we might earn this kind of a thing.
Well, thanks
So,
to guys like you who are bringing, just making things easier for developers and kind of trying to bridge that gap. I think that there's a really good chance of that happening. So it's really cool to learn about some of the things that you're working on, Marcin. And I think someday maybe we'll sit down again, and it'd be great to have a little bit of a talk about kind of, some of your perspectives on governance and some of the work that you've done there. But in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that I list absolutely everything, all of your links and all your various projects and all the things that you're working with below. And I want to thank you for coming on and spending a little bit of time and chatting with us today about some of the things that you're involved in and your block producer, and just hanging out for a little bit. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to intelligent people. So it's a feast for me. Thanks, and it's a great initiative. Also, it shows I really like it. So thanks again, and see you around somewhere on the road. Probably we might meet as we have in the past. Okay, guys.
Okay, we'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.